It was one of those summers that seemed to stretch on forever, the kind where the sun lingers in the sky like it's got all the time in the world. My family and I were out camping with the usual crew, a bunch of relatives and their kids. I was the oldest of the bunch, so I often found myself itching for some excitement. This one day we stumbled upon this hidden trail, the kind you wouldn't notice unless you were really paying attention. It was tucked away in the thickest part of the woods, barely a foot of clear space, and it felt like it was just waiting to be explored. So we marked it and moved on, thinking nothing much of it. Fast forward to that night, and we're all sitting around the campfire when someone suggests playing manhunt in the dark. Of course, being a bunch of teenagers, we were all for it. Flashlights in hand, we split into teams and set off into the woods. I ended up being one of the runners, trying to dodge the hunters. Instead of my usual tree climbing tactic, I remembered that hidden trail. Figured it would be the perfect hiding spot. It took me a while to find it again, but when I did, I crawled in and hunkered down. But as I shuffled further in, I stumbled upon something I wish I hadn't. A woman, beaten and bloody, lying there in the darkness. I froze, unable to scream or move, and then I heard someone else approaching. Panic set in as I realized I wasn't alone. Without thinking, I whimpered and crawled out of there as fast as I could. The guy behind me missed the trail, thank God, but I could hear him close behind. Adrenaline kicked in, and I sprinted like my life depended on it. Which, let's face it, it probably did. When I finally burst back into camp, everyone was staring at me like I'd seen a ghost. Took me a while to explain what happened, and even longer for it to sink in for everyone else. Cops were called. They found the guy with a knife and a bag full of God knows what. But even with him caught, I still can't shake the feeling of being chased, like he's always right behind me. Some things you just can't forget.
So I would consider camping my passion. It's the only hobby I have that I take so much interest in and get really excited to do. More specifically, camping alone. Of course, I camp with friends every once in a while, but nothing really matches the experience of camping in the wild alone. The scariest thing to encounter out in the wild, however, is another person. You would think that animal and human footsteps sound relatively similar, but they don't. I've only had it happen twice until now. The first time it was just passing footsteps in the grass. They didn't do anything, but it still scared me shitless. The second time someone stopped and waited for a while. They sounded about 20 feet from my tent. I was holding my breath until they just walked off again. However, about a month ago, I had my scariest camping experience. It was probably about 2 a.m., and I had been lying in my sleeping bag for about an hour just listening to the sounds of the wild when I heard footsteps approaching. I remember how they sounded as they brushed through the grass. They kept getting closer and closer, and at this point I was pretty freaked. It sounded like they were directly approaching my tent. And that they were. They stopped right in front of the entrance of my tent. I was trying my hardest to keep my breathing quiet. I always take a handgun with me when I go camping, just to stay safe from animals. That was the first thing to come to my mind when they stopped in front of my tent. I needed that gun. I, as quietly as I could, reached into my open backpack, feeling around softly through the clothing and such. I finally found the gun and pulled it out carefully. I held it tightly, staring at my tent door. What happened next really made me panic. The person outside my tent started to unzip my tent door. It was slow, like they were trying to be quiet. At this point I was thinking, no more playing assumptions, you need to make sure you don't get murdered. So I flipped the safety off my gun. The person stopped unzipping my tent door after that click. I choked out the words, "Who's there? I have a gun." After that, the person ran off faster than I had ever heard anyone run. I couldn't shut my eyes after that. I was shaking. I thought for sure I was either going to be killed or kill someone that night. I still go camping alone. The scariness is honestly the best part about it. Never know what you're going to encounter.
Every summer, my family and I would pack up and head to White Lake State Park for 2 weeks of camping. It was always a blast, filled with memories of rollerblading, Nerf gun wars, and water balloon fights with my cousins and the neighboring kids. But one particular memory has stuck with me from one of the last summers we spent there. I was about 16, and it was around 10 p.m. when I noticed a missed call on my cheap track phone. Wanting some privacy to return the call, I wandered off down a narrow trail that led to some empty campsites. The campground was quiet and dark, with only the distant glow of the bathroom lights illuminating the area. As I sat at a picnic table chatting on the phone, I noticed a silhouette approaching down the road. At first, I wasn't alarmed. People often took night walks through the campground, but as the figure got closer, I realized something was off. He was a man, walking slowly and deliberately, without a flashlight. As he drew nearer, he stopped and stared straight at me. I could feel my heart pounding as I watched him. Then, he started tiptoeing towards me, his movements eerie and unsettling. That's when I snapped out of my daze and bolted off the picnic table, running as fast as I could back towards the trail. I could hear him chasing after me, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the darkness. But then I heard a thud and an oof behind me. It sounded like he had tripped or stumbled over something. I didn't stop to look back, just kept running until I reached my family's campsite. When I told them what happened, they brushed it off as a misunderstanding, suggesting he was just trying to play a prank. But I knew better. It felt too real, too sinister. Now, years later, I always carry pepper spray and a mini alarm with me whenever I go out alone. I never want to experience that kind of fear again.
I hope you found these stories as chilling and unsettling as I did. It's a stark reminder that sometimes reality can be stranger and more frightening than fiction. If you enjoyed these tales of suspense, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-chilling content. This is your host, Nicholas Black. Until next time.